Now at 6:30, devastated families wonder if more could have been done to save their loved ones after visiting America's flagship Veterans Hospital.
He was right there on the parking lot and had been there in a handicap spot.
The VA Medical Center here in the district has been plagued with problems, mismanagement, staffing shortages, and inventory issues.
Now an investigation by Scott McFarland and the News 4 I-Team reveals new questions about whether the hospital is properly following up on patients after their discharge.
Woodrow was a jokester sometimes. He was family-oriented.
The annual family outing at Haynes Point just didn't seem the same, says Loretta Funderburg.
Because he wasn't there. And he would be the one that would gather up all the kids and they'd play football or get a fishing pole.
She says the grief of losing her brother is made worse by how the Navy veteran died, just hours after receiving care at the DC VA Medical Center.
He had 2 appointments that day. The earlier appointment he kept. But the appointment that he had, I believe it was at 3 o'clock, he didn't keep it.
When Woodrow Reed didn't return home in May 2017 from the medical center, his family became concerned and called the hospital, but says no one could locate him. The next day, Loretta decided to go look for herself.
And as soon as I turned in, there was his car. My heart was beating. Sometimes you just get this feeling or this sense of something.
She spotted Reed's vehicle parked in a handicap spot in the hospital parking lot. Her brother still inside, but gone. Medical records obtained by the News 4 I-Team showed the cause of death was mixed drug intoxication and ruled accidental.
Why couldn't they find the car? It was right there.
But our News 4 I-Team investigation revealed that's not the only recent death that has troubled workers and veterans inside this major medical center. Willie Davis of Southern Maryland underwent a lung biopsy at the medical center back in 2016. His family says he immediately complained of pain and coughing. Rushed that night to the George Washington University Hospital ER, they say he died hours later. His daughter declined to discuss the case on camera, but says they never heard from the VA after their father's biopsy. No follow-up call, even though medical center policies require one. Agency sources tell the I-Team the medical center didn't learn about Davis's death until just a few weeks ago, when the other hospital sent them a bill.
Where's the follow-through on these cases? Why are some of these deaths not found first by your medical center?
I can't speak to what happened before I got here. I'm familiar with both of those cases.
The new medical center director, Michael Heimel, the 5th director to run the facility since April 2017, says hospital procedures are under review and changes will be made if necessary.
If we did something wrong, we've got an obligation to disclose that to the patient and to the family.
And he admits the medical center failed earlier this year when internal VA records show a veteran from Annandale died days after seeking treatment.
We've ran this location in the past.
On February 6th, the vet who suffered from opioid addiction enters the emergency room, suffering acute pain, withdrawal, and panic attacks. He asks staff to admit him to the hospital. But after evaluating the man, the medical center teams instead released him and gave him a February 8th follow-up appointment in an outpatient program. Records show medical center workers did not formally classify the man as high risk.
Caller believes that her husband shot himself.
February 12th, the man shot himself inside his Annandale home. According to internal records, his wife called to alert the medical center 2 days later, expressing concern her husband was not hospitalized back on February 6th.
There was some type of breakdown in the process here at the medical center.
Absolutely. That was a veteran that came to us for help, and we failed. We failed that veteran, we failed that family, and we have to do better.
It's devastated us.
After the I-Team revealed what it knew about Woodrow Reed, the medical center announced it would increase parking lot security, including more surveillance cameras, to prevent another patient from going undiscovered on the grounds at his time of need.
You have the responsibility to ensure that the persons that come into that facility are protected.
Doctors at the medical center told us these types of adverse events do happen elsewhere, but get less scrutiny because this is a veterans hospital. We check federal hospital databases when it comes to communicating with patients recovering at home. In the VA Medical Center in D.C., it's below average nationally, but slightly above average in the district. Leon and Doreen.
They've got a lot of work to do.
And they say they are going to do it. They say, though, fixes of this size and scope will take years, but they'll keep working.
It's been 1 year since the Department of Veterans Affairs admitted a brutal list of failures at its flagship medical center right here in D.C.
Tonight, the News 4 I-Team investigates the local medical center's struggle to regain its footing. The new director says progress is being made.
But current employees who spoke to our Scott McFarland describe a very different scene.
Nearly 120,000 veterans have entered these doors in the last year, seeking care at D.C.'s VA Medical Center on Irving Street. Appointments, treatments, surgeries.
You're a veteran. Do you receive care there?
I do, but I will not get any procedure done there. And I've told everybody that I know to not get a procedure done at the VA.
Striking words from veterans who know firsthand what it's like inside this hospital, trying to repair its reputation.
Why do you stay?
For the vets.
They need you?
I am one, so it's hard.
We're not showing their faces because they're also current employees of the medical center, and they worry about retaliation for speaking out.
We're crying out for help, and we're just not getting the resources that we need.
It's been 1 year since internal VA investigators dropped a bombshell report about this facility, revealing widespread mismanagement, supply shortages, postponed procedures, and wasted money.
This, to me, represents a failure of the VA system at every level.
The D.C. VA Medical Center rated among the worst performing in the nation.
And in the time since, a quick series of management changes. 5 different directors have run the medical center since April 2017. The newest, Michael Heimel, who took over last fall.
This isn't a 1 month, 6 month, 1 year rebuilding. This is 3 to 5 years to really bring this facility back to where it should be.
He says they've had phenomenal success in reducing hospital-acquired infections and improvements with sterilization of medical equipment, along with fewer canceled or postponed procedures.
We have not had a procedure postponed due to equipment availability really since early December.
There have been procedures that have been postponed or canceled due to supply shortages.
Recently,
Yes.
this spring.
Recently, yes.
But employees tell the I-Team there are still postponements due to supply issues and still scrambling.
There are times that people in logistics have to run to other facilities and get a supply that a patient needs.
What you want to eat for lunch?
Oh, what we got?
That's something Monique Whitney saw firsthand when her dad was hospitalized last year there for blacking out.
I mean, I went to the supply room with a number of the nurses, and I said, this is January 1. This is after Christmas, after the holidays. You should be stocked.
Do you have enough people helping you?
No, not at all. It's a challenge every day to figure out what to do.
Employees say many of the continued problems stem from chronic staffing shortages and problems in human resources, something noted in the 2018 Inspector General report.
Even my co-workers throughout the hospital are broken beings. They're overworked and undervalued and underappreciated.
Do you think it's a crisis?
It is. It is critical.
This civilian employee says some coworkers are now struggling with their own health issues due to the added workload and weeks of overtime required to pick up the slack.
I think that one of the things that this team has really needed is recognition from leadership. That one, we know how hard they're working. 2, we appreciate how hard they're working, and that we see the results of their efforts.
Heimel acknowledges there needs to be improvement in HR, a challenge across the entire agency, he says. The DCVA has hired 136 new staffers in the last few months, and it's currently using contractors to fill some of the gaps.
I believe you have to listen to the people who do the work.
But the employees who spoke out worry management isn't listening enough to those on the front lines.
I feel scared as a patient at this medical facility. As an employee, it's a place it's the worst place I've ever seen.
The director also told us they're still in the process of creating standard operating procedures for equipment use and that staff still needs to be trained across the system. So still a ways to go to get this hospital back on its feet, and the VA system across the country is watching.
Now to a News 4 I-Team exclusive. A psychiatric patient at a major medical center here caught a cab and is accused of assaulting and briefly abducting a woman in her Virginia home.
The remarkable series of events played out early Monday morning is just the latest in a series of incidents at the troubled Washington, D.C. VA Medical Center.
Scott McFarland is breaking the story tonight.
Internal VA records obtained by the I-Team say the 29-year-old man from Manassas escaped the psychiatric ward at the D.C. VA Medical Center after entering the shower very late Sunday night. By removing the ceiling tiles, removing part of the ceiling ventilation, and crawling to a neighboring office outside the locked space. Here's what happened next, according to a relative.
He went through the emergency room and asked someone in the emergency room, the staff at the hospital, to call a taxi cab.
And they called him a cab.
They called him a cab.
He was wearing his hospital clothes.
He was wearing his scrub bottoms and a tank top.
The relative did not want to be identified because the man is accused of taking that cab ride to a home in Manassas, where police said he held a woman he knew against her will and assaulted her. Prince William County Police arrested him. It was hours later when the VA discovered their patient was missing. But that relative told us something else. Before getting in the cab, the patient called home to alert family he was out. The relative then called the VA hospital twice to warn them the man had escaped, but said they couldn't even confirm if he was even a patient. You tried to warn them that he'd escaped?
I did.
And they didn't go look?
No, they didn't even bother walking to check his room.
This is the latest in a series of black eyes for the medical center. Recent News 4 I-Team investigations revealed a patient overdosed in the parking lot in 2017, but his body went undiscovered there for nearly a day.
Scott, this latest thing, this escape, it sounds like something out of a movie going up through the ceiling. I just want to understand, the guy was in hospital scrubs. How could they not know he was a patient?
And the relative says he also had an open wound on his head from the escape through the ceiling tiles. The VA Medical Center says it is now reviewing its procedures and policies because of this, but they also say they quickly notified Virginia police after it happened.
A medical mistake, potentially impacting hundreds of women inside a major local hospital.
Yeah, tonight a News 4 I-Team investigation reveals the medical center failed to mail out required result explanations of mammography exams for at least 6 months.
And as Scott McFarland reports, it's not clear just how many women were affected.
Serving her country for nearly 2 decades, first in the U.S. Army, then the D.C. National Guard, still brings Gwen Murphy immense pride.
Soldiers and veterans, we've done a lot for our country.
Murphy expected she'd later reap the benefits after retirement with her medical care.
It's only fair that we get the best health care.
But in October, when it was time for her mammogram, she says she was told she could not have the exam done at her hospital, the D.C. VA Medical Center.
Timing is very important. I have family members who have been diagnosed and treated.
Instead, she'd have to see a private radiologist and send the bill to the VA. Why? The News 4 I-Team has learned the medical center has quietly cut back on its mammography program this year after a mishap involving women who had previously been tested.
The I-Team has learned those women underwent mammography exams here earlier this year, but the medical center failed to send the results within the required 30 days. In some cases, they failed to do so for weeks, if not months.
That's very surprising, and it's also scary.
In this memo obtained by the News 4 I-Team sent to a member of Congress, the D.C. VA Medical Center director acknowledges the mistake made by a clerk, a failure to mail letters with results to mammogram patients from February to August. Those letters explain the results of exams in layman's terms and are required to be sent in a certain time frame under VA policy. How many of them? The memo says during roughly the same time period, the medical center performed about 1,400 screenings and diagnostic exams, including mammography, breast ultrasounds, and breast MRIs. The VA tells the I-Team results were still communicated to patients without delay by healthcare providers, but those unsent letters are required under VA policy because they're easily understood explanations to patients of what can be complicated procedures. The VA also said there was no impact on patient care. But according to the memo obtained by the I-Team, the medical center was also not in compliance with VA policy requiring abnormal results be reported to women within a week.
If you have a loved one who is diagnosed or could be diagnosed with breast cancer, you want those results right away. You're living with anxiety till you get that notice.
Congressman Jerry Connolly chairs a subcommittee overseeing the Inspector General of the VA. After hearing what the I-Team had learned, he demanded answers from the DC VA and has now asked the Inspector General to investigate what went wrong.
We're going to hold people accountable, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that problems like this do not happen again.
Michael Heimel, the director of the DC VA Medical Center, declined requests for an interview, but the VA told us appropriate disciplinary action was taken against the individuals responsible for the delayed letters and that it's made changes to strengthen the program.
I think their operations need to be adjusted.
Natasha Davis had her exam in the medical center before this year's errors, but says the medical center has at times in the past been slow in providing results. You had to bird dog them for mammography results?
Yes.
They said, we'll be calling you, but they didn't call.
Right.
Congressman Connolly says he's troubled the agency won't specify how many women were affected, despite being asked to do so. Are you confident everybody impacted's been notified?
No, I'm not.
The hospital couldn't tell us how long veterans like Gwen Murphy would have to see private doctors for their mammography exams. But they say they expect to hire a new mammographer by January.
You need to take care of it immediately. And if you don't get those results, you can't. So that puts you at risk.
The VA says it's also assigned new staff to work directly with any veterans with suspicious findings or who received the delayed letters. We have put their contact information in our NBC Washington app. Scott McFarland, News 4 IT.